you rock, most people enjoy a good story. Imagine a story where you rock. I challenge you to make a difference in the world and then share your story to inspire, bring hope and encouragement to others. Together, let us create a better, more peaceful world. Let's not just imagine world peace, let's work for it. Are you doing something rocking in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, or the world? I would love to have you on my show to share your rocking stories. We are here with Mike Soroka with Sons of Ukrainian Pioneers. Morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me
Yes.
on your show.
And so you are a son of Ukrainian pioneers. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm very proud of my parents. They raised me to the best of their ability, but they told me a lot about my father told me a lot about when he first came to Canada in the beginning of 1900s and how hard everything was. And then when he lost the family to unfortunate circumstances, his first family. But then my mother came in 1927, and she married my father and had us four. I was the youngest sibling.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided to jot everything down that they were telling me. She was telling me about the horrors of Ukraine and how she couldn't trust anybody, how she lost all her brother-in-laws to unfortunate different partisans and stuff.
Well, I think it's important to document that history. And so tell us a little bit about how they came to Canada and on the boat and the ship, and what were some of the hardships?
Well, when my father came, actually he had an incident on the boat. He spotted a coin. He was only 7 years old. So he spotted a coin between two posts, and then he decided to take it. And, of course, he got his head stuck. And then nobody could, none of the ship mates or anybody could unhook him from there. The captain came. Then he finally called my grandfather. And the grandfather, of course, came, and he was mad at my father. So when they weren't looking, grandfather gave Dad a swift kick, and his head popped up. But he had the quarter in his hand. He says that was his first 25 cents he had when he came to Canada.
And what year was that?
1907.
So that was worth a lot of money in those days.
Oh, yeah, that quarter was a big thing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and when my mother came 1927 already, it was quite a modern ship, and she said they had the smoothest voyage, that, they had no trouble. And she said she always, she was a very religious lady, and she had mass every day on the ship, and it was the Antwerp. And she said she had a very good voyage, and then she came to Halifax and came by train to have Prince Albert, and my cousin of ours picked her up.
Mm-hmm. So how long did that voyage actually take?
Dad's took, I think, 3 weeks, and Mom's was a little bit shorter.
On the boat?
On the boat, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then once they reached Halifax, then how long did it take them to actually get to Prince Albert?
I think a week.
A week.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what would have been some of the hardships they talked about as they were traveling? What were some things they encountered?
The coming over, the hardships once they got to Canada is really, the immigration office was in Rostern. Mm-hmm. So my father, they had some friends that they knew. They had a team of horses picked them up from Rostern. So then they worked with oxen because they were too poor to have anything but oxen. Mm-hmm. So, and basically they, on the farm, my grandfather had to go, because he had no money, had to go work on the railroad, which he had to walk to Rostern, which was about 40 miles away.
I can't imagine that, walking 40 miles.
To go work on a railroad track, which they used to lay around Humboldt, I guess, at that time, or wherever he was going. So he would be gone most of the summers, and my father would feed the family. He would shoot the ducks and the rabbits. That's what they lived on. Mm-hmm.
So they had a food shortage, they had a lack of housing, and transportation.
Then transportation, yeah.
Yeah, and probably isolation. Did your mom and dad talk about that? How being isolated and language barriers?
And no doctor. Like there was one of my aunts was born already in Canada, and she got pneumonia and she died actually. And there wasn't even a church then, So they just buried her on the farm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was heartbreaking, some of the things that happened.
Good, and I can imagine, and it's very important to document that so we know what are some of the hardships and how life was for a pioneer when they first came to Canada.
It was tough. Like when my mom came, it was already, they had cars and stuff. So, but when my father came, it was pretty rough.
So I see on your book here, and I'm just going to hold it up here, Sons of Ukrainian Pioneers, you have this crest on the front. And can you explain a little bit about this crest and how it came to be?
Well, I designed the crest for the shield for our family, which way before I decided to write a book. And I actually have it hanging in my house. And the S is for Soroka, is spelled in English. And there's a C in the middle, if you notice. So it's the C is spelled, if it was a Ukrainian name, it would be spelled with a C. But since it's a Polish name, it's spelled with the S.
Okay.
So
And
that's why the two different alphabets.
yeah, they have the Cyrillic alphabet. The Ukrainians have the Cyrillic alphabet, which has 33 letters.
You're right. And that's, so our name is really a Polish name.
Okay.
So,
But, Ukraine at one time were occupied by Poland.
well, that's the side my grandparents from my mother's side were living. That's why they didn't get starved through that 1933 when they had this starvation. So they were just living across the river Buch, and on the Polish side, that's why they survived. The rest of the relatives lived on the other side. Stalin survived and starved them.
Yeah. You're talking about the Holodomor.
The Holodomor, yeah.
The Ukrainian genocide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
So-
So what else is in your crest?
Well, that was the two main thing the name thing, that it's a Polish crest. And it's otherwise it's very basic. It's just the sun there. I didn't know what else to put.
Okay. And is it common for them to make crests in Ukraine?
No, this was made in Canada.
In Canada.
Yeah.
And you just wanted to document as part of your family history?
Right.
Oh, well, that's good. That's awesome.
And I at that time when I had it made, I didn't even know there was a Polish that there was a shield in Ukraine. I knew there was a city of Soroka
Okay.
in southern Ukraine, and it's a large city. And there's an oblast there, which oblasts they're like provinces, which is called the Soroka. And that's when I went in Lvov Museum. There was a shield and a big write-up about it in one of the museums there.
Okay.
So and it was called Sorokyivщина, the area.
Okay. That your grandparents came from too, or just your
Well,
mom and dad?
No, that was just didn't. They came from around north of Lvov, so I'm not sure where my grandparents really came from, because the genealogy kind of stopped because of the wars there, and I couldn't go very far back on my father's side.
So why is it important, do you think, to document this history? Like, why did you write this book?
Well, I wrote the book to honor my father and mother because they were not acknowledged in the church, that they were members or that they lived there at all. And they were strong Catholics, and they did everything for that church. My mother raised, money from plays and operettas and dances, and they even ordered an altar to the Virgin Mary and palm trees. She embroidered everything, all the time, and made fresh flowers for Easter. And she was always busy, and that's why they were not acknowledged. So that's why I wrote the book.
Well, and it's important to acknowledge them and to document what they did.
That they were,
The early pioneers contributed lots to the contribution to Saskatchewan and making it the great province it is today. And in 2016, Premier Bradwell, honored Ukrainians by declaring it the Year of Ukrainians in Saskatchewan. So you've honored them. And when did your book come out?
Just this past fall. I had trouble with the publisher, so it was in the making about 5 years. So, and then as I wanted to mention why my family, or why the family was blacklisted, not mentioned, that my uncle made a cross for the top of the church, and it was an Orthodox cross. So the Moreno Church has an Orthodox cross, and it's probably the only Catholic church with an Orthodox cross. And nobody's been brave enough to get up there and change it to a Catholic cross.
Well, my understanding is both crosses are acceptable, and so that's a good thing. And that. So, what else stories have you got in there that would be important that we need to tell?
Well, mostly of me growing up then, that it's a lot about my parents, but also about me growing up, the little jobs and some of the nasty jobs you had to do. We had no TV or any, the radio didn't work most of the time. So, as I say, there was lots of things you had to do all the time, and some weren't very nice.
You had to work hard.
Right, and going to school was a real chore because we're almost 5 miles away. So that was always a chore to go to school.
Well, tell us a little bit about the school experience, because I was a teacher for 30 years, and I think education is so important. And so what were some of your educational experiences?
Well, my first experience was I didn't know English. All I knew was yes and no, and I couldn't even turn to the right page because I didn't know my numbers. And so this teacher I had used to strap me every day for not knowing, he'd say, get up to read, and he'd say, read Dick and Jane at page 17, and I didn't know where page 17 was. So I'd always go and get a strap in the morning and go back crying. And then, of course, this went on, and I was in grade 1. And so at one time he called me up after, and I was standing there shivering and shaking, and he said, hold your hand over my knee. He had it on his knee or his foot on the chair. And he was winding up. And when and it came down, I pulled my hand away. Well, then he hit himself on the knee. And he started jumping around the school like a rabbit. And of course, the rest of the students left because the students were from grade 1 to grade 12. And from then on, he never strapped me. And I thought to myself, why didn't I do that
before? And thank goodness the strap is abolished now. So I'm very happy to hear that. So is there anything else you'd like to add that would be important to tell about this book?
Well, it's just, what else? There was a lot of incidents about, I was draining the lake. We always had a big lake in front of our house. And so and Mom, of course, had ducks. So I decided, I says to my dad, why don't we take the potato plow and plow a ravine and drain the lake? Well, we just wanted to drain a little bit of the lake, but I ended up overnight, it drained the whole lake.
That was Mike Soroka with Sons of Pioneers, and we will be back with Mir Mir and a conference for young girls.